Okay, so do you want to just tell us who you are first?
Yeah, so I'm Ben Foster, director and producer, along with Mark Dennis of Time Trap.
So Time Trap was originally envisioned as a found footage movie, and then you kind of changed to a traditional style of filming. So do you think that it's more suited to a traditional film style as a story, or like how would it be different otherwise?
Yeah, I mean the found footage piece was always like an element to how the story's told and how the characters kind of find things out. And when the movie was sort of in first envisioned, it was like it was supposed to just be this small little thing that Mark and I were going to do between our first movie and what was to be our second movie. And we're like, well, we'll just do this. This will be a fun like run and gun film. But it turned out to be such a cool story as like new drafts of the script. Mark would work those out, and our DP is the one that actually he was like, and I think he probably also just didn't want to shoot on like a little handy cam. But he's right. I mean, it just the story served much better as a cinematic thing with a found footage element inside of it. And we've seen too many found footage movies at this point, so.
So yeah, you've worked with Mark Dennis co-directing before. I assume that you guys kind of have a lot of the same like visions and ideas. And like, how is co-directing much different from directing solo?
It allows you, I think, to walk away and know that this shit somebody's still driving, like when you can't handle it anymore. So I think there's a lot of times where Mark and I are like, okay, you drive, I'll be in the other room, and then come back fresh. But we've been doing this for like 10 years. We started working together in college, and we like the same movies growing up, and want to make the same movies today. And a lot of times, like if Mark writes something and I read it, it's the same. We have the same vision for what we want out of it, and we spend a lot of time getting on the same page before shooting. And then Mark, it's a lot of his stories, it's his characters. He writes the script, so he'll deal with the actors going on to set first. I'll deal with the camera guys, and then we'll kind of swap and trade jobs for a little bit, and then we'll do a take. I usually call action, and Mark calls cut. So it works, and I think it's a good thing. It's good to have a shorthand with somebody, and I've got that with Mark, and we have that with our director of photography, Mike, and it's cool.
And then you also do double duty as a producer and director, as you said. So do you think that helps streamline things, or does it ever complicate anything?
It might make it take a little longer, but I think we get what we want a little easier, and I think it definitely streamlines things. And Mark and I edit also. We're the editors, so we spend time sending stuff back and forth, and it's nice to have somebody come in and do like a fresh cut on something. Like if I do a commercial or something like that, I'll have somebody else edit sometimes. But it really is. It's like a sculpture or something. We're digging it out together. So.
And so a bunch of the movies and shorts that you've done in the past, they've been different genres like drama or comedy. So like, what drew you guys to like a sci-fi story this time, and do you think that you're going to continue in the sci-fi genre?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know if it's sci-fi. I would call it an adventure movie more than sci-fi, just because there's a science fiction element in that there's this sort of time thing with the cave, but I think it feels more like an Indiana Jones kind of Goonies journey adventure movie, and that's the stuff that I was talking about, like the 80s, like Terminator. That's sci-fi, but it's definitely sci-fi because there's robots, but it's still like an adventure thing. It's about the people that are like doing the thing. And Indiana Jones, all the Spielberg movies, we love those growing up. But yeah, it'll be something high concept. I think that's kind of always the thing. There's always a cool, interesting take, and Mark's ideas are usually something that he really works towards something that nobody's seen. And I think we've got that with Time Trap. I think there was a lot of that with strings. There's a really cool thing that happens halfway in strings if you haven't seen it. And I don't know, that's just unique. But
yeah, and so I did see that it was described as like an Indiana Jones style movie, and then you mentioned the Goonies and Spielberg. So were there any like direct influences while you guys were working on this that you were thinking of?
Goonies was sort of one of them because we wanted it to be fun. Like our first movie's more of a thriller. It's kind of like you can't bring kids to it. Like it's not Strings probably isn't something that I would have watched when I was 12, but I would have loved Time Trap when I was 12. And that's what we wanted to do. And I think it's cerebral enough, or it has enough of a puzzle to it that it's cool for an adult to watch and figure it out too. But what were we talking about? What was the question?
Just influences.
Influences, yeah. So those '80s like Goonies-y movies were things that we watched going into it, and especially for the style, like the lighting and making sure that it's not like a dark, like scare. A lot of cave movies are just like in pitch black with like some light on somebody's face. We wanted it to be sort of more. You can see the whole picture and all that. But no, we grew up on the Spielberg stuff, James Cameron. The article. There's one article that said it was Indiana Jones meets. Is it Goonies? Is that what it says? Actually, I have it right here. Not the article, but I have everything. Yeah, Indiana Jones, Goonies, and Primer. Primer is a cool like independent time travel movie, and that's a guy, Shane Carruth, and he's a Texas filmmaker also, and that's somebody that was probably one of the first movies that I watched when we first started working together with Mark. So there's all kinds of influences in there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and that kind of fits into the culture right now with the 80s nostalgia type stuff.
Yeah, so we were shooting and Stranger Things came out. And at first we were like, oh, damn it, they're doing what we're like kind of trying to do at least. But it's probably the best thing that happened to us because that's such a big deal right now. And I feel like we sort of fit into, like, if you like Stranger Things, maybe you like this. So it gives people something to jump to us from, I think. But we're out there. We're trying to figure out who's gonna pick this thing up and how it'll be available.
Yeah, and so you mentioned shooting the caves and like trying to show the whole picture, kind of. So was shooting in like natural settings, was that difficult, or was it like better in some ways than shooting in like a set?
Yeah, it was better because it looked like a cave, but it was awful. So it was really hard. I mean, because caves aren't like down the street, next to a CVS, and this cave definitely wasn't. And so it's just something we didn't think about. Even like going into like a week before shooting, we were like, oh yeah, we're really in the middle of nowhere. Like this is gonna take a while for anything to like. If you have a need of any kind, it takes 45 minutes to get round trip. So it being isolated just as a location, you have to set up a base camp and trailers and things like that, made it more complicated and more expensive and more stressful for the crew. But there's nothing, we could have never built a set like the cave that we were in. And actually the cave was added to, so there were sets inside of the cave. There's a big rock that they kind of deal with for a lot of the movie, a big kind of boulder inside of the cave. And that was built by the art department. And Madison Fisk was a great production designer that we worked with. And she built a big fountain, also like a working, 1,000-gallon like fountain with pumps and all kinds of crazy stuff. But it's cool, and it blends seamlessly into the cave itself.
Cool. And so as part of sort of the vibe of the film, and that it's like cool for adults and kids and the nostalgia of it, what is your favorite thing about watching it with an audience?
Well, one of my favorite things is that there's a puzzle, I think, for the adults, and it's fun for the kids because it's an adventure that's like worthy of being one that you would pretend to be on as a kid. And I think that's the same thing that also works for the adults, because who doesn't want to pretend to be a kid like on an adventure again? So it really does. I think it really kind of ropes everybody into one kind of headspace.
So how does it feel being able to present the film at Austin Film Fest, and are there any other movies that you're planning on seeing while you're here?
It feels awesome. This is where our Texas premiere of Strings was here, so it's really cool to have our Texas premiere of Time Trap and bring it home. There's a lot of movies. There were only 4 Texas films that they picked this year for Austin, so I'm planning on seeing all of those. I got to see Lady Bird last night, which was the opening night film, and that was great too. It was fun.
Okay, awesome. Well, we're finished. Do you